Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dey podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Nanametz, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the Growler. This is Balds Don't Lie, Paul Dana Jr., Jay Morrison. Excited to be with you here on a Tuesday. What's going on, Jay?
Trying to keep a positive outlook. A little disappointed this morning. The fumbling at the goal line has hit home.
What?
I had Jonathan Taylor on my team. I lost by 6. He lost 6 points for the touchdown and another 2 because he fumbled. A lost fumble counts as -2 in our league. So yeah, I'm a little bummed. I've run the league since 1992 and I've never won it. And I thought this was my year. And it's not.
You know what? How many people probably affected by both of defensive scores?
Yeah.
You know, you get the fumble, Jonathan Taylor on a lot. I mean, unbelievable. It's tough. It's hard to see. You know what? One league where it's not affecting anything, the kickers only fantasy league that Mark and I learned about last week that exists. So I only expect this week's Who Dey Light. I believe there's going to be a follow-up on the kickers only fantasy, which I'm still very, very concerned about. We got to be better, people. We got to be better.
I was just going to say I want to get in that next year.
I don't. Maybe you do. How could you be in more leagues and pools though, Jay?
That is true. That is true.
You only have so much time. All right. We got a bunch of stuff we're gonna get to. Speaking of time, Mo Egger is gonna come join us. I guess we're gonna have to talk about lip reading. So we're gonna get into that. And the anger, the ire from Joe Burrow, in the conversation with Zach Taylor from this weekend as that continues to take off. We'll talk a little bit about Dan Pitcher had some interesting words about that yesterday, a guy who has sat next to Joe Burrow a lot over the course of his career. We talked to him yesterday. We'll have some news on Sam Hubbard, on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, on the Browns quarterbacks, on Amarius Mims. We've got a bunch of schedule stuff that's going on. We'll talk a touch about this playoff picture. Who loves minuscule percentages? I do. We're living in the world still.
Yeah.
Still hanging on to small percentages. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I've got some stats. I had to go in and look, Jay, on something that I've been saying a lot all year, but I'd never gone in and done the tangible, like, here's the number and research. And somehow it was worse than I thought it was. Unbelievable. I cannot wait to show you and tell you about the numbers that I drudged up on something that people need to be talking more about with why the Bengals are 6-8, which I can't believe that there's topics that we haven't talked enough about with why they're 6-8, but I think this is one. So we've got all of that coming your way. Jay, you'll have some stats for us, right?
Of course. Yeah.
You got stats. We'll have Growler bet results. Good, positive Growler bet results.
Yeah.
Straight out of Back to the Future. T. Higgins goes 88. And a couple of you guys were on board. Maybe I'm not controversy, but a lot of success. A lot of people in the right range. Excited to see that. We'll have RPBs, all those things coming your way. Do want to remind you, we are doing our Christmas live show on Sunday. We will start at 10 a.m. at our spot, exclusive home for all Growler live events. BetMGM, Nation and Kitchen Bar, right down there at the Banks, right down next to the party, right off the streetcar stop. If you are going down there, come drink cheap beer. We're going to have $3 Cincy Lights, all the food deals. Get those bloodies and mimosas fired up. And just, why not start your day having some beer, some $3 Cincy Lights, and just getting a bunch of free stuff, because we are doing the Christmas show. We are giving stuff away. Our gift to you guys, the Growl Pals, for being so great. Can I just fire off a list of some of the things that we're going to have? I'm going to have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase jerseys, plural. We're going to have team gear, hats, hoodies. We've got a replica helmet. We're going to have a Grader shipper pack that we're giving away, bonus bets, Growl Pal shirts. And I just might be giving away some Broncos tickets. Maybe.
Ooh.
Maybe I'll be giving away some tickets. Vintage jerseys. Jay, we got vintage jerseys that we have for you too that are going to be in the gifts. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to tell people the gifts, but I want you guys to know that the level of gifts we're going on this.
Yeah. And I want to do a visual aid here. So we're going to give them away,
Ooh.
but one is a Jeff Blake autographed jersey. And these are nice stitched jerseys. The other one, the reason I'm doing this is there's a great tie, and the other one is a Pete Johnson. I mean, that's a throwback. Pete Johnson jersey. So Pete Johnson's career high rushing game was 160 yards against the Browns. That's who the Bengals play. The date of that game was December 17th,
Wow.
1978, which is today, which is 46 years ago today. And Pete Johnson wore number 46.
Wow. How about that?
Here's the autograph on the back on the number.
Yeah.
Well, I can't. I'm trying to get this.
I see it.
It's
Number
reversed.
46.
I'm having a hard time with the mirroring. You
There
guys
it
get
is.
the point.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
So
all of that is going to be inside the presence for y'all. Come on down. We're starting at 10 o'clock at BetMGM, Nation and Kitchen and Bar down at the Banks. You're going down to the game anyway. Come on down, pop in there, see if you can win some stuff. We'll be giving it away, and then make your way onto the game. And maybe you'll be doing it in a freshly signed Jeff Blake or Pete Johnson jersey signed by them, or a Burrow or Chase, or a new hat, new hoodie. Maybe you'll have some tickets to come back the next week. We shall see. But we hope to see you all down there as we try to, say thank you to all that you guys have done to support us all year long. All right, let's get into this. Let's rip through some news here real quick, Jay. Got a little bit more on the Sam Hubbard injury. Sam Hubbard, it's a PCL. He said yesterday, no surgery required. Likely is the word being used, out for the season. I don't think they want to rule anything out. I mean, Hubbard's the ultimate warrior type that would want to try to go back out there and see if he could do it. But likely out for the season with the PCL injury.
yeah, just horrible. I mean, it's not he's under contract next year, but you do have to think that maybe there's a chance that we've seen the last of Sam Hubbard in a Bengals jersey because of this. And if that's the case, it would be a really, really bad way. You would like for a guy like that to kind of get his flowers, so to speak, and get that final game in front of the home crowd. And maybe he will. Maybe they renegotiate. Maybe he takes a pay cut next year. I don't think he's going to play next year. He's due $9 million next year. I don't see that happening. But a great way to go out on a touchdown, the only offensive touchdown of his career. But just to get injured on that play, that has to sting.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're going to have something that could be the last play, though, might as well be that one.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, his case will be very interesting to see what happens this offseason. It'll be amongst a number of decisions. You certainly have to feel like it starts with conversation about a pay cut, and he could come back in a role that he's kind of morphed into this year.
Mm-hmm.
Rotational, run stopping, edge in the background, captain, leader type of guy that you need, but you're not asking him to go out there and really be the starter per se, outside of maybe he's in there on rundowns or whatever. But you need so much more from your pass rush. You need to have new bodies in there that's going to be amongst many tough decisions that they'll have to figure their way through. But yeah, tough to see that for Sam Hubbard. We have the Browns don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Is it going to be DTR? Is it going to be Jameis? I mean, what a mess that the Browns are. So we still don't know. They're keeping it close to the vest. They don't want to let any of the secrets out on what's going to happen between those two. So we don't know who the quarterback will be against the Bengals this weekend. The schedules are in flux. We're awaiting, I guess. So you're probably, as you listen to this, I'm going to guess that it may be happening right now, actually, the official word, because today, this is the deadline on the timing of that Broncos game. And of course, they don't have to say anything about the last game of this season until we get to 6 days out on when the Bengals-Steelers game will be in Pittsburgh. But we do have another slight tweak because they just can't do enough to this Bengals-Browns game. It's moved now from Fox to CBS after being moved from Amazon on Thursday to Sunday, but still at 1 o'clock at Paycor Stadium. That's the same, just different broadcast network.
Yeah, Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta on the call for those of you that will be watching at home. And I do think that if the Bengals find a way to to win the next two, I think there's a really good chance if they're still in it, because the Broncos or the Chargers could eliminate them before then, even if the Bengals keep winning. But if they're still in it going into Week 18, I think there's a really good chance Bengals Steelers would be the primetime game that week, because the Bengals would be in a win and in position. The Steelers could be in a win and win the division. I mean, they're so tight with Baltimore right now. There'd just be a lot on the line in that game, and they've done it before. They flexed Bengals Steelers in the finale into the last game of the year. So we'll see. A lot has to happen before then, but there's a chance the Bengals could have 2 more primetime games in their final 3.
Good Lord. How does this? It's unbelievable. Let's go into the playoff percentages here real quick. So depending on who you care about to look at or is analyzing, whatever their algorithm is, DVOA had the Bengals at 2.1% chance to make the playoffs and sneak into that 7 seed. I think ESPN Analytics had it about 5. They're all down in that area. You're all down in the chip in a chair in a prayer spot. That's all it is right now. But it's really, it's all about Thursday, Jay. I mean, for the most part, that's what it is. The Chargers at home, Thursday night football against the Broncos, need to win that game for the Bengals to have it. Then it starts to get a little more real. You start, then the path clears a little bit, because at that point, you're talking about Denver coming to Cincinnati. Obviously, they're going to have to win that game. And then Kansas City in the last week of the season, which maybe they have something on the line. Maybe they don't. Maybe Patrick Mahomes is back. Probably. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But you still having to go play Kansas City. We know what that is and what that has been for Denver. So that opens the door. But if it ends up being that Denver beats the Chargers, you need the Chargers to lose out, and their schedule. They're not losing to the Patriots and the Raiders.
Yeah,
they're just not. So this is it. Essentially, this is an elimination game for the Bengals for all intents and purposes. But if the Chargers can find a way to win, again, we've talked a lot about these divisional road Thursday games. They're tough. Yeah. And then you get into the Chargers are going to be pissed coming off that game against the Bucs, where they kind of got boat raced a little bit. So curious to see how that plays out. But Thursday night, a big one.
Yeah, and you think about it, the Chiefs have a 2-game lead right now for that number 1 seed, but they're scheduled. I mean, they've got at Houston, at Pittsburgh, their next 2 games, and they may not have Patrick Mahomes for those 2 games. They could have to win that game in Week 18 against the Broncos. So you're right, there is a very real possibility if the Broncos lose at the Chargers that could play out. That the Broncos could lose out, the Bengals could win out, and somehow sneak in.
Good Lord, it's not happening. I'm just gonna. I mean, look, I just don't. You know why? I don't see this Bengals team being able to beat the Broncos and the Steelers. I don't.
Yeah.
How many times we got to watch them play good teams this year? How many? I mean, it's not like they're just impressing the world and beating up these bad teams. They should have lost to Dallas. They played like trash against Tennessee. Ask Joe Burrow. He'll tell you.
But if you're
use F-bombs in the process.
If you're going to do the shoulda thing, well, they should have beat a very good Kansas City team. They should have beat a very good Baltimore team twice. It goes both ways. I know.
They found ways to lose.
But they didn't. They didn't blow the game against the Cowboys. So that, I mean, like I said, it goes both ways. I'm with you. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. They are going to be at home. I've written about this in the past. The send them home happy stat, where their home finales, they've got an incredible record in those. So stranger things have happened.
I'm just saying 2.1%, that feels about right. That feels about right at this point. All right. Other news we had. So yesterday we talked to Dan Pitcher, Zach Taylor, locker room was open. Dax Hill was around. Amarius Mims talked a little bit, and Charlie and I talked a little bit on, if you haven't listened, we've been doing the rewatch reaction show on Mondays, and we talked a little bit about Mims in there and how solid he looked, and that's kind of been backed up, in talking to Pitcher. It was so funny, the phrase used when talking about Amarius Mims by both Zach Taylor and by Dan Pitcher, how you really don't notice him out there, and it's just hysterical. 6'8", 345, biggest man
Yep.
you maybe in the NFL in terms of how he's built. And you just don't really notice him. And that's because of the level that he's playing at. A lot of praise heaped on Amarius Mims for the consistency that he's shown and what his approach has been, and how he's just kind of stayed at playing at a high level this year. And one thing that Pitch pointed out, Jay, that I thought was interesting, was the line of pass rushers that he's had to go against, and how it's a true gauntlet of some of the absolute best in the NFL. I mean, even just in recent weeks, I mean, TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, these names, these guys that have seen, he's seen Myles Garrett, he's seen all of the best of what this league has to offer, and he's proved that he can hold his own, and that he's a real guy. And they, the one of the things that you can take from this season, I mean, really, I would say offensively as a whole, the young players that we've talked about, that they have to develop and have to start getting better and making contributions and becoming part of the future. They've gotten a number of those. Eric All is, we're forgetting about Eric All because he's hurt, but obviously Eric All immediately becoming a centerpiece of what they hope to be, and you just hope his health turns out okay. Mims, Chase Brown, there's a lot of these guys that have kind of taken that step that you hope that they would, to help make this offense sustainable going forward.
Yeah, and I think the most impressive thing maybe about Amarius Mims is, what are we normally talking about at this time of year? The rookie wall, and he is ascending still. He's playing. I mean, I thought Sunday was one of his best games, and it's not a guy that the college season is shorter than the pro season. That's why they talk about that rookie wall. But it's not like he went through 3 or 4 college seasons even. I mean, he barely played in college, and now he's stepping in. And I think it's been really impressive, because that's a position where you can't hit the wall. Your play can't slip at all. You mentioned it, the gauntlet that he's had to go through. You're going to get destroyed if you start falling off and start getting fatigued. And he's just put the foot down, and he just keeps going and keep getting better.
Yeah, it was pointed out. I mean, his snaps for the season are basically at his total for his college career.
One away.
Yeah, I mean, and so you have all of that time, and you think about the development that almost that he hasn't needed, but that he has had, when you consider he started at such a high level too. A lot of praise for Amarius Mims and what he's done, and deservedly so, as they say. All right. Moving along though, I want to switch it over to the sideline video, right? And we'll talk a little bit about this and bring in our good friend and yours, Mo Egger, for that topic. All right, now bringing in ESPN 1530's own, the star of all things Cincinnati sports talk radio. Is that a good place to? I don't know. I got to come up with new ways to introduce.
Horribly inaccurate, but that's okay. I'll take it anyway.
Well, great to have you back here. Have you seen? How many times have you watched the video, the lip reading breakdown? Are you deep in it now? Are you looking for multiple angles? Are you slowing it down? How have you approached this?
The lead prosecutor in the John F. Kennedy assassination case did not comb through the Zapruder film the way that I did the lip reading, and I can't wait for. I mean, if Hard Knocks is as good as I think it is, we are going to get treated to some insight into that interaction tonight.
Yeah, Burrow has been mic'd up for every episode at some point, and so. Perhaps, and so has Zach Taylor. So at least it's out there. Yes. And also, though, then it becomes, will it be shown?
Right.
Yeah, they have right of refusal on everything. So I can't imagine I think they would say, we don't want that on there.
Well, I will say I do want that. Okay.
Well, yeah.
It's why they have the show. Because
right.
we want that, right? That's supposed to be the point. It's supposed to be the behind the scenes. Let me phrase a question to you about it this way, though. Why do you think people are so taken by this video? Do they just like the drama? Is it they want Zach Taylor to look like Joe Burrow's talking down to him? Is it because they want Burrow to be pissed? Why do you? I kind of just am curious why people are so fascinated by this interaction.
Yeah, because it's not like it's new, right? I mean
we've been talking about him being mad on the sideline all year.
Right. And it's an emotional game, and sometimes players yell at coaches. I mean, it happens. I think it's a deeply, extraordinarily popular quarterback and a somewhat unpopular head coach who's kind of the avatar for an organization that people have skepticism about. And so folks like to take sides. I've noticed that. And
Have
Joe
you?
Burrow, yeah. And Joe Burrow's
America?
Joe Burrow's side is an easy one to take. So
No doubt.
I'm guessing it's that. I'm sure there are folks like me who just love the drama, just love the stuff, just love it's different content. But it's interesting to me, at least. I mean, you guys on the walkthrough and on your column after the game, Paul, went into all the different things that happened during that game. On the list of like memorable things from Sunday afternoon, for me at least, that sideline interaction was pretty low on the list.
Yeah.
I kind of view those things as a part of the sport, and as a part of the sport when a team is having a disappointing season. And when a guy is at the end of what was an extraordinarily taxing week. So I'll admit that I found it, relative to some of the other stuff that happened in the game and some of the other stuff going on with the team, I found it less interesting than others, but it was interesting and noteworthy. And I think people just, without the ability to sit here and think about my answer to that question, I'm going to guess for a lot of folks, it's we like taking sides. It looked like Burrow versus Zach. Which Bengals fan right now is not taking Joe Burrow's side?
I think the reason that, because it was kind of going wild before the John Boy video even transcribed what he was actually saying. I think that's why people were trying to figure out, what is he saying? I know I was watching it in the press box. I watched it 3 or 4 times trying to figure it out, and I just gave up. I was like, I know the F word. I know what he says there, but everything else I couldn't figure it out. And I think that's a big part of it, is just it's not a skill that a lot of people have, the lip reading. You would think it would be, but it's not. It's really hard to kind of discern. And I think John Boy does an incredible job. I love watching his baseball videos when there's an argument with an umpire or when players are chirping. He does a great job of, and I don't know, I'm sure he's probably got professionals that do it for him and help him. But I think that was a big part of it, is just what exactly is Joe saying? And then once the video comes out, then I think all that other stuff plays in. I do think people wanted to see that interaction and see him get pissed, because I do think there's still some of Zach's goodwill is worn off this season, and I think people are kind of reverting back to where they were prior to that 2021 playoff run, and I think that just all plays into it.
I also think, and first of all, I called it the walkthrough. It's the walkout. So
it's
apologies.
Okay. It doesn't matter. There's too many names on all the shows.
If I could screw something up, I will.
There's no doubt.
But like, we've watched Joe this season go from guy showing body language that's not great to guy now speaking his mind multiple times in the same week about a player that he wants back and being pretty emphatic about it, to now not a blow up, but what we saw on Sunday. And so I think for a lot of us, there's the, okay, what's next? What's next? And I also think, like, whether it's fair or not, there are two things that hover over this. Number one, the Bengals have had a quarterback in their franchise's history who has told them, I'm out. Get me out of here. I'll do anything but play here. Is it a fair comparison? Not really, but that's there. And then there's also just all the pre-draft conjecture. Like, boy, there's going to get to a point where Joe Burrow's done with the Bengals. And I think there's a lot of folks waiting for some version of those two things. And maybe unreasonably, it's not like Joe can go anywhere anytime soon, but I do think there's a lot of folks waiting or searching for signs of discontent and of there being choppy waters and there being something that's going to trigger a real conflict between the quarterback and the team. And again, maybe unreasonably so, but when you have those two things there, I mean, God, how many times did we roll our eyes at some of the stuff people were saying about the Bengals and Burrow, and is he going to pull an Eli? But the subtext of that was there's going to be a point where Joe Burrow says, screw this. A lot of people felt that way 4.5 years ago. And I'm sure a lot of people are still looking for signs that something like that is going to happen now. And so I think people are looking for, maybe they're looking for molehills to make into mountains. I don't know, but I do think those two things, maybe deep in the background, maybe like one of those drones flying over the country, sort of hovers over all of this. And I think that's maybe what makes an interaction like that a little bit more interesting than if it was another quarterback with another team. By the way, players blow up at coaches. Did people watch the Super Bowl last year? Travis Kelce assaulted Andy Reid. Players do blow up at coaches. I've told you guys this before. Where I sit for the games, I sit on the visiting sideline a few rows up, and sometimes I get caught up in watching all the interactions on the sideline. Like, players do yell at coaches. It happens. But I think when you combine a lot of those things we just talked about, it makes what happened on Sunday for a lot of folks a little bit more interesting. But like, again, for me, that game on Sunday was so crazy that I walked away from it on Sunday thinking less about Joe Burrow yelling at Zach Taylor and more about a lot of the other stuff that happened.
Dan Pitcher yesterday, I sort of asked him, how common is, Dan has sat next to Joe Burrow as much as any human on the planet during a professional football game. And he said this: it definitely happens more than what is perceived by the public. He and I have gotten into it a couple of times. The camera probably wouldn't have been on us because I'm not the head coach. That's it's just intense competitors. Joe probably being the most intense competitor I've ever been around. And it happens, man. They probably happen more than what gets reported on. And I think a big part of all of this is that we haven't seen this from Joe specifically in the public, but I do think that this is their relationship. This is Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. They hash it out. They talk. These are the conversations they have. And he is it was a long game at the end of a long week during a long season. And he felt like a lot of us, I think, that either follow or cover it as closely as I do, we're just kind of over all of it.
Yes.
I don't know. This season, I'm over it, and I feel like that what Joe did, that's how I feel sitting there watching these games, watching the same mistakes happen and the same people do the same things. I'm like, haven't we done this? Have we written this story? We've done all these stories about how it's the defense this and this player's that and the offensive line this and Burrow and Chase are doing everything and T Higgins. And it's like, and I feel like Joe Burrow looked in that video. And so I get it. This is what that looks like. Joe Burrow, by the way, in his career has never had to play out the string on a losing season with a losing team. Never in his life. He got hurt the 2 times the team wasn't good. And the other times he's been in the championship games or won the Heisman. I guess his first year at LSU. But so a guy who is the most intense competitor ever is going through this for the first time. What's on? Is that you're bringing out visual aids as well? Here
are the playoff scenarios. Okay, don't tell me they're playing out the string. Okay.
Oh, sorry. 2.1%. maybe you like the 5% model. Maybe that's the one you're latched on.
NFL.com has it at 6.
Oh, up to 6. Up to 6. Stop the freaking presses.
I'm sorry to have interrupted you. My apologies. Also, who in life hasn't wanted to yell at their boss?
Yeah.
Right? Like there was a part of each of us there with Joe Burrow who was like, this guy gets to yell at his boss and it's totally cool. So who among us hasn't wanted to at some point yell at their boss? Joe Burrow gets to do that. We live vicariously through athletes. Joe got to do something that a very, very, very small percentage of us never get to do.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I watched the game with 3 people and I said, that's a man at the end of a very long week. There's something to that effect. And as much as I have had no room for talking about Joe Burrow's private life over the last week because it's his private life. And what he went through sucks so hard. And I felt really bad for him watching him at that press conference last Wednesday. But that's a crappy week, man. You play against the Cowboys, you get beat up, you hurt your knee, your house gets broken into, parts of your private life that you don't want out there. You're playing this game. You're watching someone named Cam Grandy not know how to play football. The game is not coming as easy as it should. It's the end of a long season. It's been a frustrating season. Like his own performance was, I mean, he did some awesome stuff. The hold the ball for over 9 seconds play was incredible. It just, for each of us, we all get to a point where like things boil over. By the way, if Joe Burrow plays here for 12 to 15 years and that's the biggest sideline eruption, then things are going to be pretty good. Like I think we could all in some way, shape or form just relate to like this season has not gone as we would have hoped. Joe has had a lot of things surrounding him that don't meet his standard. Joe has had some things happen to him that you wouldn't wish on anybody. And they should be destroying this team, and they're not. And it's frustrating. And we all feel it. Joe feels it, and Joe demonstrated it. The rest of us may demonstrate it in other ways. Other players on the team may demonstrate it in other ways. Joe popped off on his coach. It happens. Okay, and I think we can all relate.
I mean, I agree. I asked him about it in the post-game press conference, what was going on there, and he said that it was a culmination. It was just the frustration of everything. I don't know that I buy it. I think that whole blow up was, and it'll be interesting if Hard Knocks does show up, because they probably have it before the Fox broadcast picked up on it. It'll start earlier, and we can maybe find out. My theory is it all comes down to one thing, and that was taking a delay of game penalty on 1st and goal at the 1 yard line. And that's the effing embarrassing thing that he was talking, because it is. Sure. It's not like it was a 60-yard bomb and everybody had to run down the field and get lined up. They were at the 10-yard line and they went to the 1. How do you take a delay of game in that situation? And I think that was what set everything off. And yeah, the personal stuff and then all the other penalties, all that just adds to his frustration. But I think that's what that whole thing was about. And Zach even talked about how the headset went out and he didn't know how much of the play call that he had gotten to Joe, what he had heard, what he hadn't heard. And, he said it was on him. He should have just taken a timeout, and he's probably right. But I think that was the single issue that was being discussed there.
Makes sense.
This is also connected to something that I want to bring up here. And that is the amount of young players. And I don't just mean like, hey, there's a lot of rookies on this team. I mean guys that the league passed over in the draft that are playing significant snaps on this team. And Burrow having to be such a large part for a lot of them, and obviously in watching them make mistakes on defense, of watching them do what players who are drafted on day 3 or not drafted at all and forced to play in the NFL as rookies do, and that is screw things up, right? Paul Gunther used to have a line, I believe he was the one who said it, either him or Zim, or maybe they shared it. But for every rookie you play over X number of snaps are going to cost you a game. I could do that this year. And I've said this a lot, and I've talked about it a lot, and it made me want to do something. I wanted to get perspective. I was like, I need to really wrap my brain around this. So I dove into it, and I looked into players, rookies, snap count this year, offense, defense, special teams combined, that were selected on day 3 or undrafted. Okay. How many snaps? And how does that compare? Okay. Well, here you go. The Bengals have 1,645 snaps this year from players who were either drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th round, or were undrafted across all 3 levels. I mean, wrap your brain around that for a second. And it's not just that. Compare it to the teams that they are competing against. Think about who they're competing against, the AFC North. So you go down the line. The Steelers have 1,436, which seems like a lot until you consider it's just 2 guys that they found trust in and that they've put out there. Just 2. The Broncos at 1,355 and 6 guys. The Chargers at 1,320 and 3. The Chiefs at 1,211 and 5. The Bills at 1,005. The Browns have 800 snaps. They have 5 players at least 50 snaps. The Texans have 722. The Ravens have 707. I mean, and this is going to be the most in Zach Taylor's tenure. it doesn't just stop here. I mean, you go and you look at actually, Zach, let's see, 2023, 1145 was the number. 2022, 1434 was the number. 2021, 1108 was the number. By the way, the 22 numbers, that sound high? That's because 11,000 or 1,100 were Cordell Volson, one guy. Okay. That was only 4 players they even had that had 50 or more snaps that year. You got to go back to 2019 to find any that's higher when they were completely gutting everything up to 1886. Those players make mistakes. Josh Newton, Pittsburgh, right? Remember that? Ryan Rico, first game against Baltimore. Remember that? Dejon Anthony, Kansas City. Remember that? Mumajong Meta, Dallas. Could have been the end right there. Misses the block against Vigil, right? Cam Grandy. Remember him, Mo?
Yeah.
I mean, this is you. By the way, go to the NFC and do that same exercise. They have more snaps by those types of guys this year than Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay almost combined. Okay? This is not something winning teams do. Winning teams don't do this.
Yeah.
Winning teams don't have this many snaps by dudes that the league passed over. And that is not how you win games. And that is maybe the most under-discussed element of this season that people don't talk enough about, because these are the players that are in a large part doing what they do, which is lose you games. And that I don't think that people talk enough about that part.
And that's amazing, the stat you, because think about how many guys does Detroit have on IR right now, and they're still not relying on those kind of guys. They built a solid roster. They're not relying on all those. You name some of them. I'm trying to go through. Who are the other 8 with 50? Do you have that there handy?
The Bengals list?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bengals list here. So here's
Cochran got there this week, right?
What's that?
Did you count Cochran? Because he's not technically a rookie, but was his first.
I didn't. No.
Okay.
No. So I just, that's just it. That's not even counting dudes who didn't really like the Stubers of the world and the Devin Cochrans of the world who technically have been around but never played. That's not even counting Cochran, who got it in one game. Right. So Newton, Jong Meta, Eric All, Dejon Anthony, Ryan Rico, Cedric Johnson, Matt Lee, and Cam Grandy all have played at least 50 snaps. Isaiah Williams, Kendall Milton have a couple. They're just kind of throwaways. But Cochran, Stuber, these guys that really didn't play hardly at all before. They're not even on this list. Okay. And that's where they're at. That's where they're at. It's not like they've been more injured in seasons than this before. This is the way the roster was constructed.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's corners cut because you didn't take 2 or 3 or 4 of those positions and pay a veteran a couple $1 million. Instead, you just threw a 5th round pick at it or an undrafted rookie at it, and cost you games. Sorry, that was my rant.
That was good. No, that was
Did that cover it?
A terrific illustration. I mean,
my question to you. My question that I wanted to ask to you is there something that is an under-discussed element of this season? I mean, you hear all the calls, you know what people are mad about, and it's a lot of the same stuff over and over. Is there something that you feel like is under-discussed? That's mine. And maybe you have a different one in terms of why they're where they're at.
Well, no. What I will say, though, is this. When I bring up, hey, they have significant offensive line issues, it's interesting to me how that gets glossed over, because the guard play has been terrible.
Yeah.
And Sunday was a terrific illustration of that.
Yep.
And so, the conversation of last week was obviously all about T. Higgins. And my take was, whether or not T. Higgins is on the team next year, they have to fix the defense and they have to fix the offensive line. That doesn't mean 5 new offensive linemen. Like, sign me up for the next few years of Amarius Mims. You guys were just talking about him before I popped in. Like, I love that dude. And what Ted Karras is having to do, bookended by guards who are not playing well, you talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough, it's probably that. But they've got significant offensive line issues, and it's funny to me how many people who are fans of a team that hasn't had a good offensive line in nearly a decade are very cavalier about that. And so I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough. Like, what are they going to do? Are they ever going to have an actual good offensive line? Is Joe Burrow ever going to play behind an offensive line that is considered to be among the league's best? I want to see what that looks like one day. I'm sure Joe Burrow does too. I don't think we talk about that nearly enough, but I think as it relates to the season, what you just outlined, I haven't heard anybody mention that. I haven't heard anybody mention all the quote guys the league passed over thing, and it's a major factor in the season. So no, I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough. And if we were to do the list of underrated Bengals 2024 issues for me after your presentation, I would say that's at the top of the list.
Was it too much? Did I go too far?
No.
It was awesome.
Okay.
It was perfect.
Because we've talked about everything else that has gone wrong with this team, and that is something that it hadn't struck me. I know early in the year we kind of talked about how many rookies were playing, but to break it down to day 3 and later, it's pretty striking to see those numbers.
Yeah, because you know everybody has a first round pick that goes out there and plays a lot, and you should have those guys. There's a reason they go there, because you think they can come in and play right away. The later guys are the ones that are supposed to be their projects. There's reasons they're not supposed to play. Checks notes 1,645 snaps for your team. Anyway, sorry, this has gone to such a dark place. Mo, you should get out of here.
So
B-Dubs today. What B-Dubs location this afternoon?
Milford. We're going to be in Milford today.
Where are you going to be?
Milford.
In Milford. That's right.
So they just need Miami to lose one. They need the Colts to lose one, and they need either the Broncos or Chargers to go 0-3, and they have to go 3-0. Like we're going to do an hour on this today.
What's so? Do we need to do an hour? I think you just summed it up. You
and I both know there are folks watching and listening to this who have spent the better part of the last 48 hours just working through every possible permutation that exists that gets the Bengals to the postseason. And I'm telling you, man, if the Chargers win on Thursday night, this is going to kick into hyperdrive. It's coming. Be ready.
Yeah, I do think it gets real. I do think it gets real-ish if the Chargers can pull this off.
Right.
Then you can see it. You can see it.
Yeah.
But with bated breath, we watch on Thursday night, I guess.
The notes I wrote myself, and I'm not throwing them away.
You've got them. We're gonna pull those back out this afternoon.
Hell yeah, we are.
I can't wait. It's going to be great.
I don't know what my question to you is going to be, but I'll have them handy nonetheless.
All right. I can just do another presentation if you need.
That'd be great. Yeah, that was awesome. That was well done.
All right.
Just needed a PowerPoint and like a laser pointer, and you would have been awesome.
Yeah. A little bit more corporate jargon could have helped as well, I feel like, but that's okay. We'll put a pin in that and circle back later. See you, Mo.
See you guys.
Okay, much thanks to Mo for joining us. And again, you can always catch him and I together for an hour at random B-Dubs across the greater Cincinnati area, at least for a few more weeks as the season goes on in Milford today. So if you're listening to this and you're in the area, come swing by. Come say hi. I'll be there from 3 to 4. He'll be there from 3 to 6. Okay, let's go. Jay, you got some stats for me?
I do. I mean, if we're talking about under-discussed things that have been a problem with the Bengals, this is one, but it's just because it hasn't needed to be discussed until recently. They've been so good, one of the league leaders in not committing penalties, and who knows? I mean, they've committed 10 or more in 3 straight games, and they've won 2 out of the 3. So maybe it's not the problem we think it is, but it's still pretty striking. It's the first time in franchise history they've had 10 or more in 3 straight games. If they have 10 again Sunday against the Browns, that streak of 4 will be tied for the second longest in the Super Bowl era. So the only one longer, the Chargers had 6 in a row in 1998. Now there's 9 others that have had 4 in a row. So it's a hefty tie, but that's still the second longest streak in the Super Bowl era is a lot. And they've got 2 games in a row where they've topped 100 penalty yards. If they do that again against the Browns for 3 in a row, that also would be the second longest streak in NFL history. The Seahawks did it 5 in a row. I don't know how that happened. 5 straight games with 100 yards. But the 2017 Seahawks I think that was back in the era where they were just grabbing and tugging on defense all the time and just forcing the officials to call pass interference. And I guess in those 5 games they started doing it. But still, it has been one of the hallmarks of Zach's tenure here is they've been a very disciplined team, and we even talked about it right before this stretch started. And it's really kind of dumbfounding, but maybe not when you point out the issues with all these young guys that are playing, because a lot of these penalties are those young guys that are not used to being in there.
3 false starts in one game by one person.
Yeah, that might be a record.
Yeah. It's like, but I mean, it's just like when you start throwing it all together, and some of the others, DPI, whatever. I mean, and maybe the collection of referees that we've been seeing hasn't helped it either. Yeah, I'll go there. We've seen Ron Torbert. Perhaps it's just a bad run of referees that's causing a problem. I don't know what it is. But like so much of the stuff that's pre-snap is that's not referees. It's not anything like that. It's just sloppy. It's just sloppiness. But you're right. It is the opposite of what we have traditionally seen from a lot of Zach Taylor teams.
And I mean, Zach pointed out, I asked him about it after the Pittsburgh game, because it was so striking to see them have that many. And he said, it's just one of those games. And he was kind of right, because both the Steelers and the Bengals were over 10 in that game. Both the Bengals and the Titans were over 10 on Sunday. So that does play into it. The crew is calling a lot of penalties, but still three straight with 10 or more, that mostly comes down to you and not the officials.
It's made for a particularly delightful brand of football to put on television. When you talk about a team that's basically, it's clinging on to percentage hopes and committing a million penalties, just sloppiness. It's the kind of thing that makes you just want to yell at your boss, right? RPB recap. What do we got on the RPBs from last week?
So we had one last week, and it was what would be greater: Tyler Boyd receiving yards, Bengals longest special teams return, or the Titans longest play from scrimmage. And Titans longest play from scrimmage was 43. TB had 39, which is curious because he had a 40-yard reception. So he had a 40-yard reception and then one for -1.
Yeah.
And then the Bengals' longest special teams return was 32. I had it flipped. You got the right order. We both booted the special teams return, but I had the run and the pass flipped. But the special teams return got me thinking, because it was a Jermaine Burton kick return for 32, and I was like, he's been pretty good. He hasn't broken one. I went and looked. He's averaging 28.9 yards per kick return. If the season ended today, or if he just keeps that pace up, it'd be the 3rd best in franchise history. Pac-Man had 31.26 in 2014. Brandon Wilson had 31.25. Lost out on 100th of a point in 2019. The weird thing about it is to qualify, the NFL requires a returner to have 1.25 returns per game played. So in 17 games, that's going to be 21 returns. Burton's only at 8 right now. So they've got to rethink that number. Through 14 games, 1.25 per team game played comes out to 18. There's only 5 guys in the league that have 18 kickoff returns. But it will be interesting to see if they do lower that requirement, and if Burton can break one, because he does have so few returns, his number is going to go really high. I mean, he's got a shot to set the franchise record if you don't keep that 1.25 qualifier.
Yeah, and I feel like, can they do a new franchise record book of like pre and post 2024 when it all changed? I mean, I feel like, doesn't that change everything when you're talking about the new return setup? And you have fewer returns for individual players because there's 2 returners back there and they're kicking it to either side, so it chops it down. Yeah, that is interesting though. Okay, Growler bet recap from last week. Our Growler bet from last week was T. Higgins receiving yards that we put out there. And we even gave a range. So
Yeah.
if you can be off by 1 in either direction, so a range of 3 for a winner, because we need winners. We want winners. I want winners. And you guys won. 88 was the number. And Jay, what did we end up with? 5?
We had 5 within the range. We had 2 that hit it on the nose. So I think
Those are
guys
our winners. Yeah, the
technically
2.
the winners. Yeah. So Michael Pellegrino had 88, John O'Grady had 88, and then Danny Boy KC had 87, Cameron Haynes had 87, and Daniel Petrie had 89.
Oh, to those I say, so close. But congratulations to our winners.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. This is what we wanted. This is what we desired. We got a winner. We got more than one to make up for some lost time here. So bar tabs at Nation Kitchen and Bar are available. Just come on down. Let us know you're there. Shoot us an email to thegrowlerpodcast@gmail.com to let us know if you're coming, when you're coming, or if you want to try to set up something else for us to hook you up. We would love to do that. Shout out to a couple of submissions that tickled me. Our guy Paul Malloy teased the season to be Growler, like anything with a little Christmas theme. Rocky Top 10 a T from E&W. We had Brian R with Growler bet as sure as Burrow's home security detail. And we have William J. I'm always going to appreciate some Christmas vacation. If I woke up with my head sewn to the carpet, I wouldn't be more surprised than I am right now. Just dropping that in just made me feel good. So I appreciate that. Of course, the legend Ray White, he went country roads. So he went, I'm gonna chew it. I'm gonna do it. You guys forced me to do it. You guys forced me to do this. Okay. And I know that I'm being baited into this. I saw Chase Brown was on Scoop City, Diana Rossini and Chase Daniels pod on The Athletic that we have. And he was like, there's 4 of those empty kettles in each corner of the end zone. I was baited to jumping into one of those. I was baited in there. So I'm appealing. He's appealing, claiming baited by empty kettles that are just sitting out there, which, you know what? I hear you. I hear what you're saying there. But I feel like I'm being baited by all these songs that are being dropped in here because to me, it's encouraging me to sing. And I don't think that's something that people would want, but apparently you do. Anyway, Growler bet, take me home to the place I belong. Nation Kitchen, second chance bets, take me home. Growler bet. You did it. You brought it out of me. I'm sorry. I apologize again for everyone. You're baiting me. You're baiting me into this. This is what you asked for this, not me. You asked for this. But anyway, thanks to everybody for sending those in. 2 winners with this week.
I do have to have a mea culpa, an apology for last week because I said the submission for the for the CD Lamb and Jamar Chase combined. I said it was somebody named Harambe that guessed 69 catches for 420 yards. I forgot to write it down, and I was just like, it was a funny answer, so I thought it was a funny name. And the guy's name is Glenn Hammerly, and I apologize, Glenn. I was going off a memory that wasn't the smart thing to do at my age. So real name, fake guess.
Somebody named Harambe. Oh man!
I knew that wasn't his real name.
You never know.
You can have like a presenting name in your email that it's not your actual name. It's just kind of like on Twitter. You have your handle and then you have the actual @. And so I messed that up. And we just love Harambe. My wife's fantasy football team name is Harambe Love Football, and our home Wi-Fi network is Ghost of Harambe. So I just had Harambe on the brain.
Clearly. And what a tough beat that would be for somebody who just happened to have the name Harambe and then that happens. And it's like, no, really? What did I do to deserve this? But luckily, not the case. Jay just made that up. Good to know. Good to know. All right, Arby's. Let's see. Do we got any Arby's for me here, Jay?
Well, I do. So you guys know we like to talk Survivor on this pod from time to time, and we got to meet Sam from this season in the press box. He covers the Titans for A to Z Sports, and he just happened to be in there at halftime grabbing some food, and I introduced myself, and right as I was explaining the podcast and seeing if he wanted to come on, Paul walked in to get some food as well. And so we got to chat with him for a little bit, and he said he would be willing to come on the podcast in the off season, talk a little Survivor, talk a little how Brian Callahan has been down there with the media and all the connections there. So that was I didn't know how I was going to do it. I don't want to look like a fanboy, but I was genuinely interested in talking to him and seeing if he would come on the pod. And he could have been nicer, said he would love to come on. I sent him a DM on Twitter. He texted me back actually and gave us he said they have to, any interview has to go through CBS. So he gave me the contact person at CBS that we need to get a hold of to line it up. But that will be coming at some point.
I just wanted to let him know Operation Italy, just
Yep.
legacy
Yeah.
moment to be a part
One
of
of the
that.
best.
Yeah. And he sort of pointed out like that was the talk afterwards, realizing like, oh, I think we just did something that's going to be a thing. It's going to be
Yeah.
known as a thing for a long time. So it was cool. Very nice guy. Good to catch up with him in the press box. Yeah, that was cool. Said he lost 28 pounds on Survivor, which I don't know if that's high or low. I don't know where that rates.
He doesn't look like he's put it all back on either. He still looks thinner than he did, on day one of Survivor.
Yeah, but I mean that's crazy. That is crazy. All right, mine. I went out to Miles Murphy had a charity event yesterday at Dick's Sporting Goods in Kenwood, and it was sort of a shop with a kid. He had the West End Little Senators football team, or at least specific members of that football team, I think, that were picked with good grades or whatever. And anyways, cool event. He's starting foundation. This is one of his first events that he's done. He's kind of taken the template from Sam Hubbard and Ted Karras and how to kind of get that going and set it up and do that. And so it was a young guy who kind of seems to get it in that regard and wants to be a part of helping in the Cincinnati community. Thought that was cool. So I was out there just kind of getting a feel for it, talking to him and things like that. And when we were there hanging out, all of a sudden, a guy and a woman come up, and I don't know the nature of their relationship, if they're husband and wife or brother sister or whatever. But she pointed out he doesn't really have much of a filter, and his name was Danger. So shout out if you're a listener, Danger. Shout out to you. And it was a line of questions like, "Look, when are you guys going to be good on defense? These other guys, out there, well, you guys aren't any good. You're killing, you're blowing the season." And then I was asking if Burrow's a Democrat, and then and then all of a sudden, and it was just, I mean, it was all over the place. And I'm just like, okay, all right, wow, this is really interesting. And he's like, yeah, this stuff happens all the time. Where you go out and not necessarily this, maybe not at the level the Danger was going. At one point, the woman that was with him just walked off. Was like, I can't even listen to this anymore. But I appreciate it. It was highly entertaining. And he had thoughts. That's all. Just had thoughts. And, but that was Miles's point. He's like, stuff like this does happen all the time. And people always like, well, why don't you want to go out? Why don't you want to go do this? And he's like, because stuff like that happens, and it's just when it's all the time, it's hard, especially when you're on a defense that isn't playing well and this is under so much scrutiny. It's just hard to hear that all the time, and you're a first round pick that's had ups and downs, as they say. But I found that interesting. But yeah, shout out to Danger. You're a real one, man. That's the just getting it all off your chest. I loved. It was fun to meet him. So. And my first meeting with someone who goes by that name. So,
I mean, that had to be total spur of the moment too, because they don't advertise those things. What was Danger and that woman? Were they just shopping there? And
I think they might have just been shopping
over there.
Yeah, I think they just might have been. I mean, it was seen. He had a backdrop and balloons, and the kids were all around him. So it was clear there were. I mean, he's huge, and so you see him going around with all these kids around him. I think if you were there, it was apparent something was happening, and he was probably a Bengals player, and so anyway, it was funny. Burrow, a Democrat. I was like, oh man, here we go. Here we go.
Oh, I have a quick stat that'll make Danger and maybe a lot of other fans mad. It kind of is in the vein of the Richard Skinner, Fred Johnson stat. I can't remember what exactly it was, but the Bengals have won 4 straight games when Miles Murphy plays at least 30 snaps. They're 4-1 this year when he plays at least 30 snaps. And that one loss was the Baltimore one at home when Rico dropped the snap. Or dropped the the field goal snap. So it doesn't. He's not had a great season, but the more he plays, the more they win. Kind of weird.
Yeah. Frank Johnson, all he does is win.
Yep.
That's great. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Shout out to Mo Egger for coming on and joining us. Of course, we'll be back taking a little bit closer look at Bengals Browns this weekend and some other developments as we talk to Joe Burrow, a couple more open locker rooms, Lou Anarumo, Zach Taylor more this week. Zach Jackson, our great friend from Cleveland, who I know everybody loves his appearances, as do I, will join us. We'll talk a little bit more about Bengals Browns, Battle of Ohio, the insanity that's currently happening again in Cleveland. So it should be a fun show. Looking forward to that. So we will talk to y'all next time. Have a good one, everybody.